Hello everyone, so this is part 2 of our video on economic systems. So if you notice, our standard is exactly the same. We have economic systems and we are learning different names for economic systems. Now our LEQ is exactly the same. This is kind of a monstrous LEQ. It's going to take us 2 or 3 videos to get through this one LEQ by itself. So this is the same LEQ as the homework video prior. Now one thing I want to say that's been brought up in class a few times, when I have graphics here like this, even if I do not spend time explaining the graphics, I put them there because it is something that you need to know, whether it be for a quiz, a project, or you know what, just for your own intelligence and knowledge. So you guys hear me say all the time, I don't want to insult your intelligence. So when you see these graphics, I trust that you have the ability and mental capacity to be able to go through them and understand what they mean. So if you see a graphic like this, and even if I'm not addressing it, pause the presentation, take some time, and maybe take some notes to try to understand that graphic. So let's move on. Alright, so this is a quick review of economic systems part 1. So first, what is an economic system? It is very simple. Think about the survival activity. It is a way in which a nation uses its scarce resources to satisfy its people's needs and wants. That is it. Now in the survival activity, you are faced with limited resources. Remember, whether you are in Ethiopia, Madagascar, the United States, Germany, Russia, New Zealand, you are impacted by limited resources and scarcity. Now, each of those different nations has an economic system in which they go about answering the 3 basic questions. The way a nation decides how to answer 3 basic questions, what, how, and for whom, the way they decide to do that places them in a category of economic systems. The most common economic systems are traditional, command, and market. So once again, the way a nation answers the 3 basic questions, what, how, and for whom, places them into these 3 categories of economic systems: traditional, command, and market, which were reviewed in the prior night's videos. We also have a 4th economic system, which is not a basic economic system, but it is a mixed system. Now keep in mind, even though mixed systems are not a basic economic system, they are by far the most common economic system in the modern world. Okay, it's time to go through some pros and cons of these systems. Now, once again, guys, I am not going to insult your intelligence and go through this line by line. I'm going to pick out a few of what I believe to be the more important examples, and I trust you to get down the other ones and work through them. So a traditional economic system. So remember, guys, traditional economies, we're thinking like tribes, aboriginals, underdeveloped countries, things of that nature. So just picture like the Indians, tribes in Africa, aboriginals in Australia are those tribes you hear about in the Amazon rainforest on Discovery Channel. So believe it or not, there are actually some pros to that economic system. One of the biggest pros is a sense of self-worth and self-satisfaction. That is, you know what you have to do to survive. If your father was a hunter, you know you're going to be a hunter. If you are a female and your mother is a basket weaver, you know you're going to be a basket weaver or a gardener or whatever it is. Now compare that with the American economic system, our market economy. We have no guidance. We have to make those hard decisions on our own. Now, some of the obvious cons of the traditional economic system is that there's no such thing as entrepreneurship. They're not out to make money. They are too busy worried about survival than they are about making money, which leads to stagnation. I mean, guys, think about it. Despite the modern world advancing around them, the Industrial Revolution, the Technical Revolution, despite all of this, these tribes still live how they have the past several thousand years because change is discouraged and punished, and choices among goods are rare, and there's a lack of personal freedom or personal gain. Let's get to the command economic system. So who answers the 3 basic questions in the command economic system? And the answer is the government. The government makes all the choices. Now, if you were born and raised in America, like most of us are, the idea of a command economy may seem kind of strange or foreign to you. But imagine living in a world where the 3 basic questions, what to produce, how to produce, and for how to produce, are answered by the government. Now, as crazy as that sounds, there are some pros to it. Let's say that, during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, the Soviet Union and the Western worlds, that is Western Europe and the United States, engages in a Cold War. One of the advantages of a command economy is that since the government owns the factors of production, that's a key thing there, the government owns the factors of production, that one entity they can quickly and efficiently utilize their scarce resources to produce what they need to produce, how they're going to produce it, and for whom they're going to produce it for, much more quickly than they can in a market economy. Now, you guys hear all the time about socialist, anarchist, spread the wealth, the 99%, and things like that. Well, command economies attempt to take care of that. That is, to contrast with the market economy, which prioritizes profits, the command economic system tends to prioritize social welfare. That is, instead of having a lower class, middle class, and upper class, everyone is middle class. We may have some debates about this in class this year. So would you guys rather live in an economic system with the potential, again, potential, think about the pursuit of happiness, the potential to live an upper class lifestyle versus a guarantee to live a middle class lifestyle? Now, some cons of the command economic system is that there's no innovation or entrepreneurship. Think about this. If I go to school in the Soviet Union during the 1970s and I get a 86 on a test they used to have their 14, 15, and 16-year-olds take, it's similar to the ASVAB is nowadays. It tells me what positions I would be good at and what I would be eligible for. And let's say you're going to be a nail maker for the rest of your life because you scored at this percentage on an ASVAB-like test. And that's what you're going to do the rest of your life. And you know what? If the government is telling me that I'm going to be a nail maker the rest of my life, I'm not going to try very hard. You know why? Because the guy next to me who's working twice as hard, we're both middle class. The guy next to me who's not working at all, it doesn't matter. We're both middle class. So there's no desire to succeed or desire to be efficient because everything is provided for you. Some people claim that that is the downfall of the Soviet Union, that the people were tired of the lack of advancement in the economy. Why would I work hard if I'm going to be middle class no matter what? And finally, we get to the market economic system. America is obviously the closest idea we have of what a pure market economic system looks like. So, in a market economic system, who answers the three basic questions? The people. Who controls the factors of production? The people. We have the freedom of choice. We have a fair cost of goods, which we get into later in the year on supply and demand. And here's one I want to focus on, is that competition leads to a very efficient use of resources. Unlike in a command economy, when there's no competition, who cares? I wasted whatever. It's no big deal. Here in America, if you're working for a business and it turns out that you're wasting, several $100s of whatever, you can get fired for that, which is a bad thing for the individual, but it's a great thing for the company and the economy as a whole, because competition between producers is great for consumers. Think about Apple versus Android. That is excellent competition. Both items are very similar, yet they compete constantly trying to outdo one another, which is great for us because we get better cell phones out of them and prices get lower and lower. Now, here are some obvious cons of the market economic system. People are going to get left behind. The people who cannot participate in the market economy, those who can't work, those who can't work hard, who don't have a good work ethic, who may be less intelligent, they tend to be the lower to poverty level class. And in the market economy, those classes do exist. Just look around. We also have a middle class. We have an upper class, and we have the richest of the richest of the rich in the market economic system, which leads to, economic inequality. If you guys watch the news, you hear about the 99% versus the 1%, where the 1% controls over half of the nation's wealth. So guys, think about that. Here in America, 1% of the population, 1% controls over half of the nation's wealth. That's pretty crazy, right? So these are like the super rich billionaires we hear about. All right, we'll save that rant for another time. And finally, we get into mixed economic systems. Here's what I want you guys to know about mixed economic systems. First, I want you to know that in the modern world, command economic systems don't really exist. There are a few exceptions, such as North Korea, Cuba, a few countries in Northern Africa and the Middle East, but command economic systems are a thing of the past. Market economic systems exist, but very rarely in their pure form. Now, if you guys notice, I've been emphasizing the phrase pure market economy, a pure market economy. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. No country in the world, I shouldn't say no country in the world, but most countries in the world are not a pure market economy, and here's why. Because most countries in the world have some element of government intervention. That is, most countries in the world, even though they claim to be a market economy, the people own the factors of production, the people answer the three basic questions, there are some levels of government regulation. Here in America, we have a minimum wage, we have Social Security, we have Medicare, Medicaid. In a pure market economy, those things would not happen because, think about it, it is the government who controls those factors of production in that particular case. Now, this pros and cons list of the mixed economic system is very long, and I'm not going to go through it line by line, but I want you guys to spend some time on it. Okay, so let's move on. Now, here's something I want to show you guys. I'll spend some time on this graphic. This is the economic spectrum. I just got done sharing with you guys that most of the countries in the world are not pure command, are not pure market. They are somewhere in between. So I want to focus on this graphic down here on the bottom. So on the far left, we have a pure command economy. On the far right, we have a pure market economy. Now, if you'll notice, these four countries here, none of them are a pure command economy or a pure market economy. Even the old Soviet Union, which we use as an example of the pure command economy all the time, in fact, according to the experts, according to textbooks, are not pure command economies. The United States, which we use as examples in class, which the world uses as an example, is not a pure market economy. This is called the economic spectrum. That is, if you had to place a country or a nation somewhere on a spectrum between being pure command and pure market, most all of them would be mixed. So the Soviet Union technically was a mixed economy. We'll call it pure command economy. Now, China, if right in the middle here was half pure market, half pure command, China is a mixed economy, but they are more command leaning. Sweden is a mixed economy, but they are more market leaning. The United States is a mixed economy, but it is more market leaning. All right, so I want you guys to spend some time and try to decipher that graphic. We'll be discussing it in class over the course of the next several days. And finally, our LEQ in review. Once again, I am not going to go through this, but it's expected that you guys know it. We covered the three basic economic systems were traditional, market, and command, with the fourth economic system, which is mixed, is not a basic economic system, but it is in modern times the most common type of economic system. They each have their pros and cons, and each country falls somewhere on an economic spectrum, most of them being mixed, some of them being more command leaning, some of them being more market leaning. All right, guys, thank you for watching this video. I'll see you all in class.